Yeah, we're good. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, public to be heard? None? All right, I'm up. Good news. All right, let's see here. From the high school, Natalie Keller. The students in Miss Keller and Mr. Gorton's class have begun bell ringing one afternoon a week at Tops for the Salvation Army. This is one of their favorite yearly activities, and it's so fun to watch them give back to the community. Shout out to Mrs. Kessler and our classroom aides for supervising every week. Let's see here. From John Kennedy, Mr. Kessler. Special thanks to Eric Knapp for helping out with assistant principal duties while we waited for our new assistant principal to begin. He goes above and beyond for our students, and he is truly appreciated by our students, parents, and staff. Robert Morrison Jackson, Ms. Notaro. I would like to welcome Jessica Corzelius as the principal. Jessica is kind and sweet to our students. She is patient and takes the time to ensure all students are getting what they need. Welcome, Jessica. And from the middle school, Mike Landridge. I am happy with the growth we see at BMS and how students are trusting us and working collaboratively to build skills and solve problems. Recently, one of our students that struggles the most shared with us how important Miss Kinney is to her. The student is able to find success in math because she trusts Miss Kinney to help her when she needs it. We'll address other students that are off task or acting disruptive, and that she feels Miss Kinney respects and cares about her. Great things are happening at the middle school. And there's plenty more to read in good news, so please get on our page and take a look at that. Next up, we have a public hearing for the real property tax exemption for lower income senior citizens. Mr. Lang?
So included in the public hearing, there's a memo from me which outlines what the public hearing is about, which is the adoption of adjusted annual income sliding scale for senior citizens to be eligible to receive an exemption on their property taxes. So what this sliding scale is, which was adopted as well by the county earlier this year, basically would allow senior citizens to receive an exemption based on their income eligibility, which currently the district has, but these are just adjustments to that income eligibility. This is the result of kind of inflationary factors and the cost of living going up, so senior citizens can still remain eligible even with the cost of living increasing to receive these types of property tax exemptions. And you can see the scale is based on their total annual income, and it's they get a percentage of the exemption. Any questions?
Any questions, guys?
They see their citizen in here.
Hey, I have my arms card.
The scale that you were referring to, Andy,
Yep.
is that attached here?
It's in the memo, and it's also in the resolution that's below.
Thank you.
Yep.
The city did not do the same, or the county did?
So the recommendation from us is that we would adopt this to be consistent and plus it's a good thing to do too.
I would have to agree. All right, I'm going to get a motion to approve the real property senior citizen tax exemption and resolution. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Bowman, could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Benedict?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right, I'm going to ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Riegel, could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Anderson?
Good.
Was it?
Was it you?
Doesn't make a
Okay.
difference.
Regal and Anderson, correct?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right, presentations. Educational technology update from Ms. Wendy Maloney.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. I've been here a little over 3 months, and I'm just going to give you an update on what's going on in our department. So I'm going to summarize what we have on here, but you should, everyone has a copy of it. Well, okay, great. So personnel staff, we have gone through and kind of reviewed some of the BOCES staff that we have here. We have a couple of BOCES staff on the site. I've also worked through some of the inventory controls that we have in place, and actually, try to tighten up some of the tags and the limitation of our assets that we have. That aligns with the controller audit that we had here a couple years ago. As far as like the leadership in technology, I've been able to go through and just reestablish the leadership within technology, within the department, with the staff that we have. And we reappointed, Mr. Smith reappointed me as the data security and protection officer for the state. So we actually have that updated as well. And I'm also working with all the EDLA 2D compliances to make sure that we're meeting all those requirements. Okay. There it goes. All right. As far as like the leadership, what I'm trying to do as far as leadership and kind of leading and growing our department is I am meeting with the department once a week. I've created a once a week meeting with all the staff to come. We all go to Robert Morris and we meet together and talk about the week, talk about what's going on in each of the buildings and any changes that we may have in place. I'm also working with the teachers' aides in each of the buildings, the high school and the middle school, and I'm shadowing them to understand kind of what we have in our classrooms, what technology is working, what the teachers are up to, just to get myself more oriented into the district. I'm also assigning different projects and tasks to the staff to make sure that we're all aware of what's going on, and also some areas for people to kind of dive into some different directions that maybe they haven't done in the past. Trying to pull the department together, trying to make a solid team. I've been also working with Edutech, which is the BOCES that we have, and they actually oversee our network. And I've been working with them on some more maintenance that we need in place. The oversight of the budget, been working with the SAAs, which is what we use to get our aidable software and any kind of equipment. And working on those to make sure we tighten up that area. And looking forward to what we're purchasing for our next coming budget. Areas of ongoing needs are infrastructure. I've been working on the infrastructure to understand the environment that we have and what we need moving forward. Also working on what expectations will be for capital projects so that I'm in alignment with that as well. Ensuring security and filtering for student privacy. Working with the student Chromebooks. Student Chromebooks are always an issue because students lose them and break them, and just trying to make sure our inventory and all of our reset on those type of devices are there. The website, we actually implemented the update to the website. We went from ThrillShare to Parent Square, which is our smart sites. Been working with the communications consultant on that as well. Classroom software, been supporting classroom software with the teachers, providing access, making sure all the teachers have the access that they need, and the software that they are expected to use within their classroom. ClassLink, which is our single sign-on, I've been working with that and doing some auditing behind the scenes to make sure we know what software we have and to make sure they all line up with our approved EDLA compliance. And that is that law compliance, which we've already said multiple times. Making sure our contractors have that, our vendors have the contract signed, making sure that we have that in place and have it accessible. Staff acceptable use, I've worked with Tricia about fixing our acceptable use and actually adding some changes to it, which we've done. And we're going to be implementing that new acceptable use document this month. Ensuring that the students have the correct student management system, which is our school tool, which is our student management system, to make sure that aligns with all of the acceptable use policies as well as the software. Auditing our relationships with the privacy agreements, which kind of goes hand in hand with the vendors and the contracts that need to be signed. Auditing the filter and the websites, going behind the scenes to see where the kids are going, what websites are they accessing, what's pulling our data, and making sure that that is compliant and aligns with what we're expected to use as far as software. And I'm working with other district, within the district and the departments for different software and applications. Because there are some software and applications that may just be within a classroom and not be for the whole district. So make sure you don't lose sight of those. Technology support, and making sure that we're rotating all of our staff and that all our buildings are supplied with daily staff so that we keep things rolling and we're not having tickets that are open for too long. I'm trying to make sure our tickets are closed within a week. All buildings have staff throughout the day. I have different staff members stationed in different buildings that may not have a full-time TA. We are filling a TA position, and she actually started today, so she's going to help us support the buildings, Jackson and JK, that we don't have full-time staff in. And also working with the FMX system, which is our ticketing system, and that's our system that we're going to be using here out for inventory. So I'm working with that system as well. Oops, too fast. Curriculum, been working with Dr. Corey and the principals. We have computer-based testing that's coming up. We're actually meeting about that to make sure we're aligned with what the state needs and also what the classrooms need. We'll be testing 3 through 8, which will be April. So we're making sure those are all in place. Also working with licensing and purchasing of what we might need for 2024 as far as the classrooms and the software that could be related to testing or assessments. And collaborating with the special education department. I've been working with Kelly in the special education department to coordinate tutoring, managing suspended students, making sure they have devices and access to the software and or tools that they need to work from home. Again, the district website, we moved from our ThrillShare to Parent Square, which will allow us to have a platform that actually integrates our Parent Square, because it's a Parent Square website. We'll have more integration with communications, and Emily and I are working on that so we can move forward and grow that part of our kind of the integration, which will allow us to have a lot more seamless communications through our website and our Parent Square tool. That was a quick overview. Does anyone have any questions?
What's a tech ticket?
A tech ticket? A tech ticket would be like a help desk ticket. If your computer wasn't working, or maybe your active board in your classroom wasn't working, or a student couldn't log in, you'd go into FMX, which is a software, and you would just write up a ticket and say, this is what's happening, this is where I am, this is who I am, and that ticket will generate an email to us, and then a technician will come out and help you with that trouble ticket that you have.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the things Wendy has brought to us, which has been well received, is extensive experience in the prior district, and we have been pleased and impressed with her technical knowledge as well. So thank you, Wendy.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So you don't feel overwhelmed?
I do not feel overwhelmed,
Okay.
no. I feel, I mean, just, trying to understand some of the fundamentals of how we do things here, because, every district does a little bit different.
Mhm.
But as far as like knowing what questions to ask, I feel very comfortable with that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good, good.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
for your time.
All right, next up, Mr. Lang. Long-range budget planning.
Yes.
This is our favorite topic.
Yes, so as we approach budget season, so I've been here a little over a year now, and what I think is important for every district to do is go through like a long-range financial plan. And what this looks at is prior year's financial condition, and then tries to utilize that data to project subsequent years. So there's a lot of assumptions in a lot of these projections, but I think it's a really good way of planning subsequent budgets and subsequent financial condition as we go forward. And I'm looking at 3-4 years in advance at this point. So again, what is long-range financial plan? It's really a roadmap. It's a survey of where we are. It's a historical look at where we've been, and then we're going to utilize that data as well as any known data that we have at hand to project moving forward. So it's a great tool to really have a good understanding of district finances, especially for someone coming in who's been here a year now. So I think it's really beneficial, and we did find some really good information throughout this process. So what are some of the steps that we do during the long-range financial plan? It's almost like an audit of previous years. So we survey the financial condition. I look at previous year's financial statements, I pull reports from prior years, I look at our financial system. We look at the strategic goals of the district, any long-term capital planning, how are our finances aligning with the district's goals. We go through and look at major assumptions for the projections. So we see where we're at, what are things that are happening right now. Many of you heard about the Rockefeller Institute's Foundation 8 study, certainly impacts this projection. So a lot of things that are going on, we try to take into account for planning purposes in future years. So some of the things that I found during the long-range financial plan research is we want to look into the future to reduce the amount of appropriated fund balance that we're using to offset the district's budget. So we talked about that during last year's budget presentation. It's something that was mentioned to our audit committee during our annual external audit presentation. And it's one thing that I think should be a priority for the district moving forward. Just for overall financial health, is to try and limit the amount of appropriated fund balance, how much we're taking from our savings to balance the budget. So it's something that if we rely on in future years can result in a structurally unbalanced budget. So that's one of the key takeaways. We want to always ensure compliance with the 4% unassigned fund balance limit. That's Real Property Tax Law 1318, which limits the amount of unassigned unappropriated fund balance the district can maintain to only 4%, which we will and want to remain compliant with that. We want to look at our debt service and make sure that we have a level and predictable debt service. So we don't want to have peaks and valleys in our debt service. We assume debt for capital projects mainly. So we want to kind of look at that and focus on that as an area of stability. So we don't want to have significant increases in debt service and significant decreases in debt service because that has other impacts in other areas of the budget, such as the tax cap. So we want to make sure to plan accordingly for that. We want to fund reserves in accordance with the district's reserve plan. On tonight's agenda, I did revise the district's reserve plan with current balances. So we just want to make sure that as we go through the budget process and as we end the year, we want to make sure to fund our reserves in accordance with that plan. So we're not overfunding, but we also want to make sure to have appropriate funds in those reserves for planning purposes. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're aligning the district's finances with our strategic initiatives. So this is kind of a crash course in fund balance, but real quickly, there's 4 major types of fund balance. Fund balance can be restricted, assigned, unassigned, and non-spendable. You don't really need to worry about non-spendable. That's more of a balance sheet number. 3 that we really want to focus on is restricted, assigned, and unassigned. Restricted fund balances are reserves. Those are funds that are designated for a specific purpose. They're established usually through either voter approval or board authorization, and can be utilized for only specific purposes. For example, capital reserves can be used for offsetting any capital debt we would incur, things like that. Assigned fund balance, that's what we utilize during the budget process to offset any shortfall in the following year. So that's our appropriated or assigned fund balance. That's the amount we're taking from our savings account and saying we're going to use this in the next year as a revenue to fill in the gap between revenue and expense. And then unassigned fund balance, that is the amount we just talked about, the 4%. If fund balance doesn't fall into any of those 3 categories, it's considered unassigned. And that is restricted to the 4% of the subsequent year's total budgeted appropriation. So the first type of fund balance we'll talk about, unassigned fund balance. So again, this is limited to 4% based on Real Property Tax Law 1318. As you can see, historically, the district has maintained 4% or right about 4%. Again, in 2021, it looks like it exceeded just by a tiny amount. But again, in 2024, which was this past year, we did maintain a 4% unassigned, unappropriated fund balance, and obviously we're compliant with that. And again, unassigned fund balance are monies in excess of assets over liabilities, so that's our operating loss, profit or loss, you could say. And they have not been categorized as any other form of fund balance. Appropriated fund balance, this is the amount that we set aside in the current year to offset subsequent year expenses. So you can see that we have this chart here that shows the percentage of the following year's budget, how much we appropriated, what that percentage was. So you can see it's fluctuated between 2.5%, 3%, 5% in 2022. But you can see in 2024, it jumped up to that 6%, which we talked about during the budget process for last year. So it's something that was discussed with our auditors. They just don't like to see that number be more than 4%. So that's in our long-range financial plan, that's going to be our target, is try and keep the amount of appropriated fund balance down to a 4% of the subsequent year's budget. So you can see here, I'm even showing it a little less in the following year's budgets. We're showing, $2.5 million is a allowable amount, that a healthy amount that we would be appropriating to offset the following year's expenses. Reserves, again, the district can, these are equity accounts or savings accounts that the district can contribute to. It can be only used for specific purposes. The district has a reserve plan which sets allowable levels of funding for those reserves, appropriate levels of funding for those reserves. And these can be used to offset extreme increases in some of these areas, which can fluctuate year to year. For example, TRS contributions, ERS contributions, those we have little control over as far as the district's contribution. So we need to make sure that we have reserves set aside. If there's significant increases in those amounts, we can utilize those reserves so it's not so impactful on the district's general fund. So this is another part of the long-range financial plan. We look at revenue projection and expenditure projection and then bring those two together. So revenue projections, you can see I'm showing a steady, pretty much a steady increase in revenue, mostly in the amount of state aid. We're looking at about 2% increases in state aid, and that's a conservative estimate. Right now, there's a lot of things up in the air, especially with the foundation aid study that the Rockefeller Institute released. So this is, we believe, to be a conservative estimate. There's a lot of provisions within those, there's a lot of recommendations within that study that could be beneficial to the district, but there could also be recommendations that would be detrimental to the amount of foundation aid the district could receive. So it's kind of a toss-up as to where it will land. But again, for the purpose of this projection, I said about a 2% increase per year in the total amount of state aid. State aid is the lion's share amount of revenue that we receive. It's over 50% of the total revenue the district receives, so we're really reliant on that to balance our budget. Tax levy, I show a 2% tax levy increase, but again, the total amount the district could increase taxes is determined by the tax cap calculation, so we haven't done that yet for this year. So for the purpose of this projection, we're just showing a steady 2% increase in the tax levy. Other revenue remains relatively unchanged. It decreases a little bit as we no longer are leasing some of our buildings, so we're showing some of those decrease in other revenue, but it's relatively stable. It's a minor amount of revenue. And then the fourth piece of the revenue is that amount of appropriated fund balance. So you can see that we're using the $2.5 million moving forward in these projections. Expenditure projections. So again, similar to revenue, we try and kind of look at the total landscape of expenditure and try to project that based on what are our known factors. So some of our known factors are some of our biggest expenses. For example, we have collective bargaining agreements that we can estimate increases to salaries, which also adjust contributions to retirement systems and those things. So there's some really accurate projections, but there's also some things that we just don't know of yet. So I go through and basically project based on which part of the budget those expenses are. So there are some assumptions included in here, but there's also certainly some known factors as well. You can see what's interesting is this black line shows the percentage increase year to year. You can see spikes in 16-17 and spikes in 23-24. What that is the district during those 2 fiscal years contributed amounts from their capital reserve into the capital fund for the purpose of capital projects. That was authorized by voters during the capital project referendums. So those are kind of anomalies. But generally, you have a standard, between 3 and 5% increase each year in actual expenditures as we look at the previous years and then as well as following years. So as you can see, I'm projecting between a 4 and a 4.5% increase each year of the projected years. So when we bring those two together, we're looking at expenditures on the left and revenue on the right, and then the surplus or deficit on the far column. So these two lines represent revenue and expenditure, and in a perfect world, you never want to see those two lines cross. They will be parallel in perpetuity. But based on the projection, I am showing that for the 27, 28, 28, 29 school year, we're looking at a minor deficit. So that's something that we need to really keep an eye on. Basically what's happening is our expenditure increases are outpacing our revenue increases. So that's what's causing that, that crossing of those two lines. They want to be parallel in perpetuity. So it's something that we want to kind of keep an eye on as we are developing future budgets, something to be aware of. But again, these are all based on some assumptions, some known assumptions, and some are just, we're projecting. But I'm pretty confident in these figures, and it's something that we can use as a tool as we're building future budgets. So just to take away, reduction, or in summary, just a reduction in the amount of appropriated fund balance, which we already talked about. We want to stabilize the tax levy increase. We don't want to have those big peaks and valleys in the tax levy increase. We want it to be stable. We want to fund reserves in accordance with the district's reserve plan. We want to closely monitor revenues and expenditures, and that's something that I'll continue to do in my position here is continually update this long-range financial plan yearly, so we have one more year of data, and we can utilize that for subsequent years. And then finally, we want to closely monitor the impact of that foundation aid study specifically for this year. Mr. Smith and I will be on webinars with NISCUS and New York State Association of School Business Officials, just to it's a 390-something page document with all these recommendations. So, like I said, some of them are good, some of them can be detrimental to foundation aid. So, as we move through that report, certainly we'll report back to the board during the budget process to see if that would potentially impact the amount of foundation aid we receive in the following year. Any questions?
If you only predict a 2% increase in revenues, but a 4% increase in expenditures, right?
Yeah, well, it's a 2% increase in state aid.
State aid.
So overall, I'm showing that only the final year of the projection, 28-29, is where we would show a deficit.
Okay. Where would that extra money come from if we have an increase in expenditures?
Sure. So
You don't want to take it out of the...
Yeah, correct. I mean, the goal would be that, that's far enough away that we can plan appropriately our general fund budget to be able to thwart any reduction in revenue that would result in a deficit.
Okay.
So bottom line is there's two ways to be able to balance a budget. You can either realize additional revenue or you can reduce expense. So I think a combination of those two, just keep monitoring that. We want to make sure that those two revenue and expense lines never cross.
So you're saying for the revenue part that if we're not going to take money from a reserve, then that means that we have to increase the tax.
So he's not saying we won't take money from the reserve. He's saying we have to watch how much we take from the reserve.
Correct, yeah. I mean, in the projection, we're showing a $2.5 million contribution from appropriated fund balance. So the three major revenue sources, state aid, tax levy, and then appropriated fund balance and other revenue kind of combined are the three biggest. So those are the ways you can make up any shortfall in revenue.
He's also assuming a very conservative tax levy or a tax cap.
Correct, yeah, 2%. It could be higher than that. It could be lower than that. But and also state aid, 2% increase in state aid is fairly conservative as well. So I wanted to try and be as conservative in my revenue projections as possible, just because I wouldn't want to overestimate revenue at this point. So, because there's a lot of things up in the air on the revenue side. It's just something to really focus on and keep our eye on as we move through these years. And like I said, I'll continually update the long-range financial plan, which will impact the total amount of expenditures. Each year, we have changes to contractual obligations, to employment contracts, things like that. So these expenditures, projections will be adjusted each year to make sure it's the most accurate depiction of what the potential expenditures will be. Any other questions?
Can I ask what the anomaly was for this year?
The 23-24?
Mhm.
So we're 24-25 right now, but the 23-24 anomaly was the capital reserve contribution for the new capital project.
Yeah.
We moved $6.9 million from the general fund,
Mhm.
capital reserve, into the capital fund. And that shows as an expense in the general fund. So it increases the expense those years that we had that. It's neat to see, graphically, but that's the story behind it. I figured I'd make sure that you were all aware.
Mhm.
Andy, thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you. Yeah.
All right, reports. Mr. Smith, you're up.
Okay, thank you, John. I want to begin by congratulating John Kennedy, faculty and staff. Mr. Nadu is here tonight. They received compliments from the U.S. News and World Report, top 4% of the elementary schools nationwide. I believe the plaque is up on the wall there, and Mr. Kessler and his staff are very excited about that, so congratulations to them. Later on tonight, you will be approving, upon my recommendation, Darlene Petsky as a new community service schools director. She will be starting in January. I do want to recognize Trisha Jordan at the high school. She has been doing a wonderful job filling in for Ms. West, who is out. Thank you to our staff members at BHS as well for stepping up, but Trisha really has done a nice job. She's at the rock concert later on tonight. And we are launching, we're in a trial period now, but we're launching a new hall pass system that I've heard some positive chatter about from our kids and staff, so that's going to be starting after the break. It's an e-hall pass system. What's really neat is say that John and I are a couple of kids in conflict and we both have to leave at the same time. And if we tag both John and I in the e-hall pass system, and if John and I both have to leave treatment classes at the same time, they come up as flag. And so they'll not be allowed in all at the same time. So it's a really cool system. I had lunch with some kids last week and they were talking about it. And Trisha Jordan has been kind of leading the way with that, along with Wendy in the tech department, so that will be starting in January. Busy week this week. We have 3 concerts at the schools. We have 7A orchestra and band on Tuesday night, 5-6 band and orchestra on Thursday night, high school on Wednesday night, our first boys home basketball game Wednesday night, and the rock band concert is going on at 7 o'clock tonight, moved up from one of our last snow days. And the match of the Rockefeller report, it's literally 300 pages, it's sitting on my desk. There are some key points I can share with you now. I've been sharing with you fax and emails as well. And so interestingly, the report does not recommend one new, or it does not recommend a new formula. Instead, it recommends steps to update the formula that we have now. This is with respect to the foundation aid. Some of the recommendations we found, they are sensible. For example, looking at poverty data from the replacing poverty data from the 2000 census, phasing in changes over time, looking at how we rank our ENL students, those types of things. Some of the recommendations could have a negative impact, some could have a positive impact. It all depends on what the governor decides to use. And we should hear more about that in January. And right now it's too soon to know what the implications are. We're still going through that and going to see what the governor and the state recommend and move forward. Anything else to add to that? Want to recognize John Regal. He was recognized this past weekend by the Western New York Amateur Football Alliance for his contributions to youth football. So John, nice job. Well done. And best wishes to our families and staff for one Christmas and holiday season. Students will have 2 full weeks off, which only happens about once every 6 or 7 years. They will return on January 6th. So that's all I have.
All right, next up, student ex officio's report. Cameron.
All right. D&D Art Club mock trial and war have begun meeting weekly. Mock trial has finally gotten a case. We'll have practices Monday, Tuesday, and Thursdays to prepare for trial. The BHS Production Club has begun rehearsals for their spring musical, which is Newsies. Last Friday, B&D Swim competed in their first swim meet this season with Lily Emerson, Maddie Bellamy, and Dom Southall having 2 individual wins against Medina. They also had sectional qualifying times along with Will Fulton. Batavia Track and Field competed in their first meet this season. Cheer and basketball have continued practices. Cheer's first competition will be this holiday season. They will compete in the Christmas tournament. B&D Hockey has continuously been winning competitive matches and has been featured on a local sports-focused social media. The record can be found online, which is a fancy way of me saying I don't know what the record is. The environment at the high school is a little shaky. I just don't have anything specific to report on at this moment.
All right. We're going to have a call for executive session now. This motion will be to move to executive session to discuss matters relating to the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and matters of student discipline or specific student placement and/or program, or that would otherwise disclose confidential, personally identifiable student information. Could I have a motion, please?
So,
Mr. Regal. Could I have a second? Ms. Bowman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
We will be returning from executive session to public session.
Good. Give me 1 second. And then I will take care of it. Get back down to where we've got to go here. So 1 moment. One second. Jennifer.
But you read what Jason wrote.
Yes. All right. So what time did you guys go back into public? And did you do a motion?
We did.
Okay. So what time would that have been at?
How Christian was
Yeah, I
that?
got it.
Jason's got him?
I got them for you. John and Corinne.
Okay, John and Corinne.
John Regal got Corinne.
Okay, what time?
6:48.
Okay, 6:48. And it's John and Corinne. And all were in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We're good?
All set? Okay. All right. What's that? All right, I need a motion to approve the grouping of consent items H through M. Can I have a motion? Ms. Bowman? Can I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Anderson?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right, now we're on to old business. All right, revised board resolution to appoint an acting principal in the absence of the appointed school principal. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Bowman? Who was that?
That's me.
Ms. Anderson, sorry. Can I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Ledbetter?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
New business, approve the single audit report for year ending June 30th, 2024, as prepared by Mengo Metzger Bar and Company LLP, certified public accountants. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Benedict, can I have a second? Ms. Ledbetter?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Approve the extra classroom activity financial report ending June 30th, 2024, as prepared by Mengo Metzger Bar and Company LLP, certified public accountants, and an extra classroom activity corrective action plan related to the evaluation of the district's extra classroom activity funds ending June 30th, 2024. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Benedict, could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Lemke?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Approve the 2024-2025 BCSD fund balance and reserve plan. Could I have a motion? Could I have a motion? Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Lemke? Could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Anderson?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Approve the 10 and 12-month employee paid holiday schedules for 2025 and 2026. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Lemke? Could I have a second?
Second.
Who's
All in
it?
favor?
Me.
Ms. Anderson, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Approve the settlement agreement and enrollment agreement. Could I have a motion, please? Ms. Bowman, could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Benedict?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Discussion and/or other reports. One, child abuse in an educational
So I
setting.
just, per state law, we just learned this past fall. I just want to bring the board attention to some documents in the agenda. Child abuse prevention training. The document essentially has, I think, 3 sections. The first couple of pages in orange simply identifies who does what, You can see there's a role in there for school board members. Your job is simply to be aware, and this is about child abuse in an educational setting. So it's not about child abuse at home, child abuse in school settings. So the first part simply explains what the expectations are. You can see there's roles on there from everything from school board members to bus drivers to school counselors, and what our respective roles are. When it comes to this, that's the first part. The second part, it's a typewritten page, it looks like this, child abuse in an educational setting. This simply explains what the roles are of each member of our school, duties of the employees, duties of the school building administrator. Essentially, if we see child abuse happening in an educational setting, we're simply obligated to share the information. There's some paperwork to be filled out. There's my duties as superintendent. And then there's different scenarios. If the child makes the allegation versus the parent versus somebody else who's not the parent, there are different steps we have to follow. That's what again, making the board aware of this, to what the steps are. And there's additional sections there. And the final section is simply our board policy, which we have in the blue font at the top. The board does have a policy on child abuse and maltreatment. The first part is child abuse in a domestic setting, which is not what we're talking about here. But within the policy itself, it does talk about child abuse in the educational setting. And essentially, I'm just bringing this policy to your attention, and then bringing to your attention what the training expectations are, and then what the roles are of each member of our school district. So that's all I really need to say about that.
Okay. All right, then 2, we have administrative reports for the curriculum, operations, and for business. Those are all on our page, so please take a look at those at your leisure. Then we have our board goal updates. Let's see. I think we're doing pretty good on our board goal updates thing.
I will say there are some events this week. I know Corinne's going to do a tour of the high school this week. That's been planned. And the newsletter that was just out had an article on the bike in. So just my 2 cents there, Jim. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We do have some things that are going to be coming up after the first of the year that we'll be able to move forward with a lot of our goals. So more tours and everything else. So that's that. All right. Board member comments or any news to share? No? All right. Then I'm going to need a motion to adjourn our meeting.
No, I need one more executive session.
We need another executive session. All right. I
Do
need
you
a
need
motion.
another executive session?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have that on here.
Personnel, you have a list of reasons.
All right. We will be going into executive session. A call for executive session will be a motion to move to executive session to discuss matters relating to the medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and matters of student discipline or specific student placement or program, or that would otherwise disclose financial or confidential personally identifiable student information. Could I have a motion, please? Right. And we will not be returning. Right.
So moved.
Ms. Lenbe, could I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Bennett?
Okay.